Hello everybody and welcome to Dev Gurus, your go-to place for anything programming or UI UX related. This is the first episode of our Python tutorial that's gonna teach you everything about Python. Whenever you are learning any new programming language, there's a certain script that you have to start with in order to bless your journey from here on out, and that is the Hello World script. And it goes like that. Print hello world. Have to greet the world, right? Now if we run it, we get hello world. At this point, there are a few things that I have to cover. First, you don't have to run the script through the terminal. You can run it through Visual Studio Code and it's gonna run it in its own dedicated terminal. And you don't have to use Visual Studio Code for this. You can use any other IDE like PyCharm, like VS Code, like Vim. You can even use the default Python IDLE and it's gonna work completely fine. The other point I need to cover is whenever you try to run your script through the terminal, you have to type the word Python and then the name of your script. The keyword Python tells the terminal or the command prompt if you are on Windows that you want to use the Python interpreter. In order to be able to use this keyword, Python has to be registered in your path environment variables operating system. Otherwise, you are going to get an error. And if you have everything working, you can type Python hello world, which is the name of our script, and voila. Now, if you look at hello world here, the text that got printed here, we are going to notice that it's surrounded with those quotations. They don't have to be double quotations. They can also be single quotations. And this tells the interpreter that this is a string, which is a piece of text in any programming language. It's called a string. For the Python interpreter, it doesn't actually matter if your text is surrounded by single quotations or double quotations, but in some cases it actually matters. And some of those cases is that if your text contains an apostrophe or something, so if you type it's so easy, you get an error. And the reason for that is since our text was initiated with a single quotation, the interpreter is waiting for another single quotation to end it, and it considers the apostrophe here as the single quotation that ends the text, which is wrong. And also it's wondering, what is this part? What does it mean? It means nothing to it. So you get an error. And in order to get over that, there are two fixes. You can either surround your text with double quotations, which is gonna get rid of the problem completely, or you can keep the single quotations but use a backward slash. This backward slash tells the interpreter to ignore any special meaning that the character after it has and take it literally. If we run this script now, we get... It's so easy. Python is actually so easy. As we said earlier, this is called a string, and a string is a data type, which, as we said, means a piece of text. So this is a string. But are there any data types in Python? Actually, yes. There are integers, which are whole numbers. They don't have any decimal points in them. They are just whole numbers, and they can be positive or negative. If I run this now, it's gonna run completely fine because it knows that this is an integer. In a few moments, we are gonna learn how to make Python tell us the type of our data. We also have other types like floats, which are fractions or numbers with decimals in them. It can also be negative because it's a number. A number can be positive or negative. The last data type we are going to cover for today is Boolean. And Boolean is like the states of a switch. It can either be true or false. Now, how can we confirm the type of our data? We do this by using the type class, which tells us the type of our data. If we run this script now, we're going to get class str. Class because type here is not a function, it's a class. We are going to talk about functions and classes later in this tutorial, but for now, class is an object, okay? But str is what matters here. Str is short for string. And we can do this with the rest of our data. If we use the type class with the rest of our data, we'll get this output. str for string, int for integer, float, and bool for booleans. Now, if I change this and replaced it with 0, would this still be a float? Write your answer in the comments. The answer is yes, it's gonna stay a float because it has a decimal point in it. As long as the number has a decimal point in it, it's considered a float. Implicit conversion means that the data types are converted in the background. The interpreter does it automatically for us. Try to add an integer to a float like that. What do you think it's gonna be? A float, an integer, or a string? Write your answer in the comments. If we run this script now, we are going to find out that it's a float. And the reason the output is a float is floats can fill the role of integers because 1000.0 is equal to 1000. 1,000,000 is equal to 1,000,000. The 0.0 here is negligible. While integers can do the same to floats, the Python interpreter always implicitly converts types from the less generic one to the more generic one. Explicit conversion, on the other hand, means that we explicitly tell the interpreter to convert a certain type to another type. For example, if we printed the type of 123, as expected, it's going to be an integer. But if we explicitly told the interpreter to convert it to string, and we do that using the str class, we get that the type is now a string. We can also convert strings to integers, but under one condition: the string has to consist only of numbers. If it contains any alphabetical characters or any symbols, it's going to return an error. If we try this here, it's going to work fine. But if we added any letter to it, anything, we are going to get an error because it can't convert that to a base 10 number. We can also convert booleans to integers, and the reason we can do that is that any electronic device, including computers, runs on binary language, and on binary language it has two values, 0 or 1. 0 means the switch or the transistor in the electronic device case is off, and 1 means that the transistor is on. So a true, which we said before, is like the on state of the switch, means it's equal to 1. And if this is false, that's gonna be a 0. If we try to convert a float to an integer, 1.23 for example, it's gonna truncate the integer or approximate it. It's gonna remove the 0.23 and it's gonna only return the 1.3. And as we said before, in implicit conversion, if we converted a integer to a float, it's gonna add a 0.0 to it. Now, before I start talking about variables, I need to explain something first. You notice this part? Have you noticed that the interpreter doesn't pay attention to it at all? It acts like it doesn't exist, and it doesn't give off an error. Like, if I did this, this is an error. If I ran the script, this is an error. But when I add the hashtag before it, and I don't even have to add the space, just the hashtag, it works fine. The reason for that is this is called a comment, and a comment is a piece of text inside the script that the interpreter ignores. It skips it. And the reason we use comments is to give notes to ourselves, to remind ourselves of something, or to explain something to our future selves, to give notes to our teammates. We might have done something that's not really straightforward, so we might explain it to them. So comments are very useful, and you're gonna find them in most programming languages, and they are really, really useful. So how do we write a comment in Python? We only add the hashtag before the statement, and we are to go. If I added the hashtag before any of these lines, is gonna become a comment, and it's gonna not print it. The 0 is gone, if you noticed, because we commented that line. Now, what if we wanted to store some data to use later in our code? We do that through variables. Variables are places in the memory that we store data in to retrieve later. So this is a variable. The part before the equal sign is the name of the variable. The equal sign itself is the assignment operator, and the part after the equal sign is the value of the variable. In this case, this is a string variable. It takes the type of the data that we pass to it. We passed here a string. This is going to be a string. And if we assigned an integer to it, it's going to be an integer. And the reason for that is no decimal point after the number. So this is an integer. If we added a decimal point, it's going to be a float. Variable names in Python start with either a letter or an underscore. So I can say my variable is going to print 1.23. And as we said, it can start with a letter too, so this is going to work fine. But variables in Python are case sensitive. So if we did this, this is the capital V and this is a small v, those are completely different, and just change the value of them to see the difference. And the first one is going to be 1.23 and the second one is going to be 1.57. We can also override the values of variables. So if I did this, if I defined a variable with the same name as a variable that I defined before, I'm reassigning a new value to that variable. So now these two, since they are after the my variable reassignment, they are both going to print 1.57. But if I move this before the reassignment, it's going to be 1.23. The reason for that, interpreters and compilers move from the top of the script to the bottom of the script. So they read this line, then this line, then this line, then this line. So when this line got executed, the value of my variable was still 1.23. It wasn't changed yet. When reassigning a variable, you don't have to give it the same data type. You can change the data type, and the type of the variable is going to change too. So I can do this, and it's completely fine. If I run this now, 1.23, and hello world. This is a float, and this is a string. We can also assign multiple variables at the same time. And we do that by doing this. Like if I wanted to assign X and Y and Z, we can do 1, 2, and 3. If I try to print this now, print X and print Y and Z, this is gonna print the value of each variable separated by spaces. So we get 1, 2, 3, and we can do something cool. We can switch or swap the values of those variables. Like we can give X the value of Z, and we can give Z the value of Y. If we try to do it one by one, we're gonna lose the values. Like if I said X equals Z, and then Y equals X, you're gonna notice that they all became 3. Let's come on this one to see better. And the reason for that is the value of X became the same value of Z, which is 3. Then Y took the value of X, which is now the same value of Z. So now Y is also 3. So that's why we get 3, 3, and 3. But we can swap those values in one line, and now they're going to actually swap variables, because the interpreter sees the value of this and like puts it in the queue that we are going to assign the value of this to this, but it doesn't execute it yet, and then puts also in the queue that we are going to assign the value of X to Y and Y to Z, but executes all of those at the same time. So we get 3.1. That is just flat without losing any of them. So that's a cool trick. In the next episode, we are going to talk about input and output, string formatting, operators, and functions. If any one of you is wondering how print is taking these variables and printing them on the screen like that. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, Dev Gurus. See you next episode.